Welcome to the Midnight Train to Sleepy Hills. We hope you enjoy your ride, and we ask all guests to be aware of your surroundings, because there is danger in Sleepy Hills. Additionally, we will be releasing new episodes weekly, so stay tuned, and please like and subscribe. Now, back to our latest installment.
"What are you saying?" said George in an angry tone. "Will you stay there, please?" "Okay, good. I'll get there as soon as I can get you off the phone with me." "Yes, I will be there very soon." "Okay, right now then." "Yes, Sleepy Hill Cab Service. How may I help you?" As he heard what he would only describe as a young person and their first job, he stopped to answer and thought of the conversation he had just had. Lucy and her newly adopted cat were heading to a possibly dead end while he was about to engage in his own frivolous adventure. He thought of his time in the force, and maybe this was the spark he needed. George would often look at his police album and remembered the adrenaline he experienced during car chases and even the rare standoffs. He licked his lips with a certain level of excitement, and although he was just past the age of cops and robbers, getting out of the house really got his juices flowing. "Sir, did you hear my question?" the young operator asked with a bit of concern. "Yes, I did hear your question. Could you send a cab to my home? I'll tell the driver where to go from here." "That sounds good to me," the operator said, as they waited for George's addresses. Bruce looked at the computer screen blankly. He knew today was the big day for Margaret. The night before was good because it allowed for them to relax and have fun. The night before was good for the both of them. Dancing with her and holding her close like that. That wasn't something they had done together in a long time. As special as that time was, Bruce felt as if Margaret was slowly growing distant from him. He knew how much time and effort she put into the presentation this month alone. He would find her in their split office room, sleeping on top of papers in front of a flickering computer monitor. The first few times he would wake her and lead her to bed. Unfortunately, last time he found her like that, he just placed a blanket over her. Telling her to slow down or take some time off would always put her on the defense. This morning was no different. "Come on, Bruce, get up." She had gone straight to bed after the barfly. For whatever reason, he wasn't able to go to bed, so instead he went to the living room to watch the news. Hearing the news, especially nights when he wasn't able to sleep, helped. The stories the news shared at times could be pretty sad. However, he felt like he needed to know what was going on. How could he protect his family without knowing the dangers? It was because of recent disappearances that he had purchased a firearm. Margaret was unhappy with his purchase, but he knew he had to do something in the face of a possible threat. Purchasing the safe and using it as a nightstand eased the tensions a bit. He even went as far as to explain to his two kids how his pistol was not a toy, and for no reason unless with his consent that they would even be allowed to touch it. Dylan and Abigail are great kids, and he wasn't just saying that because he was their father. They both got good grades, but his son Dylan did get detention from time to time. Spitting out answers without being called had earned his son a negative relationship with some of his teachers. His son, despite his outbursts, was still a good kid. While some children asked for expensive toys, both of his children seemed to be content with what they had. This brought Bruce a small smile to his lips. Sure, other parents would brag about their kids on the honor rolls, but knowing his kids have a good heart and are honest meant more than any A on a report card they could ever bring. Hello, may I help you? Sure, I can make the adjustments to the commercial. And yes, I have no problem adding that special discount code. What else can I do for you? Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Miss Robinson. Looking above his computer monitor, he stared at his boss's closed door. A sigh slowly escaped his lips as he replayed his interaction with Larry. Buying more time seemed to be his only option. Depending how the presentation went for Margaret would determine his response. He wondered how everything was going for her, but he also remembered that she said not to call her at all. I need my focus narrowed to this single goal. He focused on the grain of wood his boss's door was made of. Slowly lowering his eyes from the door, he slumped back into his chair. And looking at his computer monitor again, I guess there's no point in worrying about something I have no control over. However, deep down inside, he secretly hoped that she would not be awarded the contract. He was not jealous of Margaret's success, but he knew if she got this contract, he would be seeing her a lot less. This concerns me because, unlike everyone else, he wanted Margaret to spend more time at home and around the kids. On the other hand, she had put so much time and effort into this presentation that it would really hurt her if she got this far off and failed. Another sigh escaped as he began to type. He felt like he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If she got what she wanted, he would be seeing her a lot less. And on the other hand, if she failed, it would be a massive blow. Imagining her crying at home and laying on the couch with a half-drunken bottle of wine. Seeing her in pain caused him to experience the same. As he finished typing another sentence, he glared down to an empty coffee cup. Well, that will never do, he said aloud as he reached out and grasped the cold porcelain coffee mug that read, "Best Dad Ever." Lucy and George II had taken a nice break underneath a shade tree while sitting comfortably on the stone bench. The wind had taken some sand and struck her in the face, disturbing her from her relaxing and watching the Sleepy Hollow power system building. And while sitting there, she had noticed a small crowd in a limo show up. Unfortunately, her eyesight wasn't as it once was, but despite her poor sight, she had recognized one of the gentlemen leaving the limo. If I had to guess, I would say it was the mayor. And from the looks of it, he was fundraising from private donors. She knew the majority of the time politicians spent their time raising money to be re-elected. Sitting there, her eyes began to grow heavier by the minute. She didn't even try and fight to keep her eyes open. They closed without warning. The feeling of her body against the stone bench faded from memory, descending into the dark abyss of the mind. It felt like she had sat there all night. If it wasn't for the gentle sprinkle of raindrops against her skin, she could have stayed there much longer. Shrugging and turning with frustration, she slowly opened her eyes to find herself on the stone bench. But she was not familiar with the location. and her cat was nowhere to be found. As she pulled herself up from the bench, she noticed her cheerleader uniform on. This time, she was not barefoot, though. But each drop of water that touched her felt like sharp needles. Looking downwards from the Sleepy Hill power system that was not there anymore, she began to rub her temples. She tried to remember. Why was I here? But the harder she tried to remember, the less that came back to her. Looking upwards, the shade tree was no longer there, but remained was a dark and gray sky. A droplet struck her forehead, which made her wince with pain. As she reopened her eyes after wiping her forehead, the clouds only seemed to get darker as the storm seemed to approach, ever closer. Well, she said under her breath, at least there are no more monsters this time. The sound appeared to come from behind her, but the difference in distance did give her some reassurance. With that, she scaled down to where the Sleepy Hill power systems should have been. The sound of her walking and the gentle thunder with the sound of raindrops striking was strangely calming. Despite being totally lost and a monstrous wolf on her trail, she felt no fear. It wasn't long till the sidewalk turned into a gravel path, then to grass. This time the sound sounded much closer, and turning her back, she first noticed it. There on top of the hill was the wolf. What shocked her wasn't how fast the wolf caught up to her, but even at this great distance, the eyes of the wolf, the deepest, darkest green lights emitted from the beast's eyes. Lucy turned from the wolf on top of the hill. From the corner of her eye, she could see the flash of light, and the rain seemed to grow a bit stronger. At this point, she was entering the forest, and from her estimation, she had walked past where Sleepy Hill power system should have been. To her relief, the forest trees provided good protection against the rain. The pace she moved was fast enough to keep her distance from the wolf, but not so much that she felt fatigued. The grass was a bit higher in the forest, and her legs and shoes were becoming pretty soaked. But even as she was slushing around in the grassy and wet surroundings, she didn't give up, and she kept pursuing to where she didn't know. However, this didn't slow her down, but what she was looking for was a safe place to stay. Great, she said aloud as the wolf was getting closer. Looking around frantically for a sharp stick or a rock, she came across a clearing. At the center of the clearing was a very large mound. Analyzing the clearing, there wasn't even a single tree present. Turning around to see how close the wolf was, revealed no signs. Well, she said to herself, it looks like it's not raining any in this area. Failing to locate a single rock or stick, she approached the mound with curiosity. The slope upwards gradually became so much that she dug her hands into the wet grass and felt the mud leak between her fingers. She used her arms to pull herself as her shoes became caked in mud and began to slip. Taking a handful of air between gasps, she finally pulled herself on top of that hill. This time, the wolf was getting way too close, she thought, but was too afraid to turn around and look. Exhausted and realizing she was trapped on top of this mound, she walked to the center. What does all of this mean, she wondered, as the difficulty of walking became more apparent. As she could see was the massive mounds of mud moving underneath her. Her breathing was much more labored, and for whatever reason, she just couldn't catch her breath. Staggering forward and accepting defeat, she closed her eyes as she continued to move forward. Her feet were quickly going numb as she began to shiver. Opening her eyes and preparing for the end, what greeted her stopped her in her tracks. It took a moment for her to recognize what was before her, but approximately 10 feet away, the top end of a wooden ladder. As she stared at the two wooden foundations and the steps that led downwards, carefully walking closer to the ladder, she could hear and smell something. She could hear something coming from behind. At this moment, and without thinking, she walked up to the ladder and began to climb downwards. What she felt was heat. Not so hot to burn, but could definitely tell there was a fire burning below. As she lowered herself about 5 feet into the hole, she looked straight upwards, and there, staring down at her, was the wolf. The green glow from its eyes stopped her from descending anymore. Then, without warning, the ladder began to shake. She grabbed it more forcefully, and it appeared her left forearm caught up in a blaze. The burning pain caused her to scream upwards. Buster was starting to scratch Lucy. "Come on, lady, wake up!" But all that came was the meowing sounds. Lucy's eyes flung open as she pulled her left forearm away from George II.
And that concludes our episode for today on the midnight train to Sleepy Hills. Please stay tuned next week for our next episode and follow the journey of what occurs in the town of Sleepy Hills. Do you sleep well?